Hey there, and welcome. Today, we're going to map out one of the most famous prophecies ever. But here's the thing. What if it's not actually about a single battle? We're going to dig into the source texts and piece them together to show you what looks a whole lot more like a final grand military campaign. So, when you hear the word Armageddon, what's the first picture that comes to mind? For a lot of people, it's this image of one single cataclysmic battle, just total chaos, the end of everything. But what if the source material actually paints a different picture? What if, when you put all the pieces together, you see something much more strategic, a coordinated campaign with clear objectives and a primary goal that might not be what you think it is? Okay, so the very first thing we have to do is kind of reframe our thinking. The prophecies, they don't actually describe Armageddon as the final battlefield. Instead, it's more like the initial staging round. Think of it as the massive base camp where all the enemy forces gather before they launch their big operation. All right, so this is basically our strategic map for this whole thing. We're going to follow the entire campaign step by step from the very first move all the way through to the final victory. Let's do it. So, here's the big idea, the main takeaway right up front. When you actually stitch together the different prophecies from across the source texts, what you get isn't some random, chaotic free-for-all, no. You get something that looks like a dramatic rescue operation, a fully coordinated campaign designed to save a group of people who are right on the brink of being completely wiped out. You know, every military campaign has to start somewhere, with an opening move. And in this narrative, that's exactly what happens. The huge army that gathered at that Armageddon base camp, they start pushing south. And they have one primary target in their sights, the city of Jerusalem. And the assault is just swift and devastating. The city's defenses are completely breached, and it falls to the invading forces. We're not just talking about a military capture here. This is described as an absolute humanitarian catastrophe for the people living there. The prophet Zechariah actually describes this in pretty grim detail. He says, and I'm quoting here, "The city will be captured, the house is ransacked. Half of the city will go into exile." I mean, this is the moment of absolute despair. It's the lowest possible point for the people of Jerusalem. And it's right at that moment, right when it seems like all hope is completely lost, that the entire dynamic of this war gets flipped on its head. Something spectacular, something world-altering is about to happen. The sky itself basically becomes the stage for this. The sun and the moon, they go dark, plunging the whole world into blackness. This is a sign that everyone on the planet can see, a sign that something absolutely unprecedented is taking place. And then, out of that darkness, the sign appears. The sources describe the king arriving, and this isn't some secret, hidden event. No, this is a blaze of glory on the clouds, something witnessed by every single person on Earth, all at the same time. Now, for the survivors trapped in Jerusalem, this is way more than just a spectacle in the sky. It's a moment of just shocking recognition. They realize their rescuer is the one their own ancestors rejected, and this hits them hard. It triggers this massive wave of profound national repentance and sorrow. So now the counterattack begins, but here's where it gets really interesting. The king's first move? It isn't aimed at the main enemy army that's occupying Jerusalem. Instead, it's a highly targeted rescue mission happening way off far from the main theater of the war. This whole counteroffensive plays out in two clear phases. First, you have what you could almost call a special forces-style operation. It's a solo mission to save a remnant of his people who are trapped in a place called Bosra. Then, second, comes the assembly of his main heavenly army. In that first strike at Bosra, wow. It's described with this incredibly powerful and, honestly, visceral symbol. The king goes in alone, and he crushes the enemy forces holding his people captive. His clothes get stained red from the fight, and this image is called treading the winepress of God's wrath. It's the signal that righteous judgment has officially begun. Okay, so the remnant from Bosra is now safe. The heavenly army is fully assembled. Now the campaign moves into its final stage. The king and his forces, they advance on their ultimate objective, liberating Jerusalem. And his arrival is an earth-shattering event. I mean that literally. The moment his feet touch down on the Mount of Olives, which is just to the east of Jerusalem, a massive earthquake splits the entire mountain right in two, creating this huge new valley. The way this final battle climaxes is just fascinating. The whole invading army isn't defeated by swords or any conventional weapons. They're annihilated by the power of the king's spoken word. But their leaders, the ones the texts call the Antichrist and the false prophet, they face a totally different fate. They're captured and thrown, still alive, directly into the lake of fire. So if we just step back for a second and look at the big picture, it becomes super clear this isn't just a chaotic brawl. The whole thing can be mapped out. It's a coherent, strategic military campaign with very distinct phases and locations. And this table lays out that strategic flow perfectly. You can see it all. It kicks off with the enemy gathering at Armageddon. That leads to the invasion of Jerusalem. That in turn triggers the king's arrival, which leads to the special rescue op at Bosra, then the gathering of his army, and it all culminates in that final decisive victory on the Mount of Olives. It all fits together. So when you think about this whole event, not just as a story of judgment, but primarily as a story of deliverance, a dramatic rescue for a people at their absolute lowest point, it really shifts the focus, doesn't it? It moves it away from being just about destruction. It completely reframes the narrative, and it leaves us with a pretty powerful final thought to chew on.